We'll give it another minute, 1 or 2 more minutes as people flow in. Okay, I think we will start. Yeah, that's right, yeah. Okay, so let me just briefly review the instructions that I gave this morning, and then we can take some questions. And let me share the screen again. Just to show again where we're moving. So what we did yesterday and in the first session this morning is the phases in the section on the mindfulness of breathing. So we start off being, at least trying to be, simply mindful of breathing in and breathing out. And then we are following the entire, or at least trying to follow the entire extent or stretch of each in-breath and each out-breath. So that would correspond to knowing whether one is breathing in or out long, breathing in or out short. In the way I'm explaining, we're not specifically designating, that's a long breath, that's a short breath, since the difference between them could be somewhat obscure. But we're trying to follow each breath through its beginning, middle, or its extent, its end, and then each out-breath from its beginning through its duration to its end. So that corresponds to following the long breath or short breath. So that is the phase of training that we were doing yesterday and the first session today. And now we're in the process of moving to the next phase, which is training in experiencing the whole body while breathing in and breathing out. And I pointed out this morning that to note the change in verb, in the earlier sections, the emphasis is on knowing the extent of the breath. And here, the verb used is trains, one trains, which implies that one has to make an extra effort to fulfill these stages of the practice. And we haven't yet gotten to the phase of experiencing the whole body while breathing in and breathing out. But what I did was to go through this is the sort of method that I developed for myself of preparing the way to experience the whole body while breathing in and breathing out. And that is, initially, one wants to be able to experience the whole body, but it's difficult to do that at once, to just jump into the full experience of the whole body. So the way we approach this is by going in stages, first through the body scan, slowly sort of going through each part of the body, front, from the top of the head, down to the lower abdomen and the pubic region, and then from the top of the head, down the back of the body, down to the buttocks, and then from there we go down the legs to the feet. So we do that in phases, trying to pick up whatever sensations become manifest, become evident. And then after we do that, do the slow scan, then we do the sweep. The sweep is just moving quickly, like pouring a bucket of water over the head. The water just flows down the body. So here you use the bucket of mindfulness to just pour it through the body, not outside the body like water, but through the body, picking up whatever comes in that sweep from head to feet. First, we were doing it a few times just from head down to the feet, and then with the out-breath going from head to feet, and with the in-breath going from feet to the head. So that's as far as we got, and we still have some more stages to go until we get to experiencing the whole body. But if there are any, again, questions based on the method that we started this morning, and again, practical questions, clearly stated, simple, direct, no theory, no philosophy, and the question should be stated concisely, not with long elaborations. Okay, so I have to look for and the way to ask the question, again, is by using the hand symbol that you find. Well, I'll end the stop share. Okay, the hand symbol you find on the bottom line of your Zoom window. If you don't have a separate raise hand symbol, then it will be under reactions, comes under reactions. Wow, quite a few questions. Okay, so going in order, first is Gita. And you have to unmute.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Bhante. First, I want to say thank you for this great retreat. It's been awesome. So, sadhu, 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 and namo buddhaya. Bhante, this last technique of sweeping the body, for me, neck down, the body is dead like a log. So I'm not sure if I'm doing anything wrong. Like above the neck, I can feel tension and I can feel tightness, especially the forehead and in between the eyebrows, energy there, and any kind of discomfort at the back of the head, front of the head, and, cheekbones. I can feel all that. I mean, experiencing the body, but neck downwards, this body is like a log to me. It's dead. What am I doing wrong? It's very odd.
Wow.
Like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong because I can't feel like any sensations in my hands, feet, thighs, anywhere in the body. Like, it's just, what is wrong with me?
I don't know.
I mean, I've been doing the body sweeping technique for a long time.
You've been doing it?
Yeah, every day I practice. It's part of my practice every day. But I do not only the external, I also go into the internal. And I also use your diagrams for the internal. Like I actually visualize the heart organ, the lungs. And so I get in. So that's not important. What I'm trying to find out is, what am I doing wrong neck down? I can't feel the body.
I mean, generally, in the outset of this technique, the sensations for most people, the sensations will not be so clear or prominent, but if you keep on attending to the region, some sensations should become manifest. You should feel something.
So maybe I just need more practice?
Whatever you pick up, just be satisfied with that and just keep on following the method. And then as the mind becomes more sensitive, it will become better attuned to the sensations in the body. until one could start picking up the sensations at subtler levels.
Mm-hmm.
If you have really trouble picking up sensations, maybe you use actually your hands. You don't show your video because you don't want people to be seeing this. But when I say tend to the face, you could put your hands up. Yeah, too much microphone. You put your hands on the cheeks. When I say come to the neck, put your hands on the neck and even press in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Coming to the chest, you
Chest.
put the hands on the chest. And again, you could press a bit. Similarly with the abdomen. Of course, the back you can't reach with the hands.
Mm-hmm.
If you start to pick up sensations in the front, then you'll in time pick up sensations in the back.
Okay, Bhante.
Yeah,
It's been so
work,
strange. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. Like, I can feel sensations like neck and above, for sure. Like, I can feel the tightness and all that. But below the neck, it's like a dead log.
I think if you really literally couldn't feel sensations any place in the body, you would not be able to walk, because when you walk, you depend upon sensations in the body
That's
to
true.
ensure that you don't collapse.
Yeah. Yeah. Walking meditation is definitely focuses in. Yeah, that I agree with. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry for the weird question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so next will be Kevin, and again, you would unmute.
Hi, Bhante. Thank you for leading this retreat. My question is, what is the right way to integrate and balance this practice of mindfulness with practicing jhana? In the Visuddhimagga tradition, I know people are taught to enter jhana, then exit jhana, and then focus on mindfulness or insight. Is that what the Buddha also taught for us to do? Or what did he teach about how to practice both jhana and mindfulness within a meditation session? Is there a sutta that addresses this?
Yeah, in a way, this question at this point, I would say, is a bit theoretical. But let me just say briefly that, first of all, in this 4-day retreat, we're not aiming at jhana, but we're aiming at, in fact, even in the Satipatthana Sutta, you don't really find any kind of emphasis on jhana. It seems to me to be the Satipatthana system, seems to be a system. Of course, some of the exercises can lead to jhana, but it seems to be a system that is not dependent upon jhana, but following its own principles, it leads to some degree of samatha, of calmness and settling the mind, and then it moves more directly into insight. So it seems that there are different systems, different techniques. Some emphasize attaining jhana first, and then emerging from jhana, then developing insight. But this method, in 4-day retreat, we're not really capable either of, unless you have special, really mature faculties, of either going into jhana or getting the insight knowledges. But we're trying to prepare through mindfulness to get deeper experience of contemplation of the body, the factors of the body, and then moving directly into contemplation of mind without passing through jhana.
So do you think then that the Buddha really taught these as separate practices to do on separate occasions? When he'd say go do jhana, he meant literally just go do jhana, and then at other times practice the satipatthana?
Yeah, this again is something of a problem of textual interpretation, and different teachers will have different opinions. And in a way, I don't want to really get into that. This becomes a scholarly question. Now I just want to deal with any kind of practical questions, like the kind of question that Gita had about what should I do under this situation or in that situation.
Yeah, sorry, I understood it's kind of going that way. It just, for me, I do both practices, and I'm just not sure if I should integrate. For me, I do both practices, and I'm not sure if I should integrate them or do them separately. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, just in this retreat, just follow the instructions, and then on some other occasion, you could consider how to deal with the relation between them.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Next is Madeline. You unmute.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bhante. I'm in Essex in the UK, so I'm way ahead of you in terms of time. This is just a little question. I really love the Satipatthana Sutta, and when I've been studying it for quite some time, and some other teachers say that breathing in, experiencing the whole body. They say experiencing the body of the breath, but
Okay.
I noticed that this is and when I've been practicing before, I'm really committed to Satipatthana Sutta, and I've always just practiced feeling the whole body of the breath. But it was really interesting. So what's your take on that?
Okay, that's a good question. In fact, I should have brought that point up when I was giving the basic explanation. Because this is the explanation in the Visuddhimagga chapter on mindfulness of breathing, and then it becomes the explanation adopted by the lineage of Theravada teachers who rely strongly upon the Visuddhimagga. So that we have the expression sabakaya patisangvedi asasamiti sikati. So experiencing the whole body, one breathes in, thus one trains. Experiencing the whole body, one breathes out, thus one trains. And so what the Visuddhimagga says is that what is meant by the whole body here is the whole extent of the in-breath and the out-breath, from the beginning through the duration to the end. So that is the whole body. And experiencing the whole body means that one knows the entire extent of the in-breath from beginning to the end, and the entire extent of the out-breath from the beginning to the end. But that is pretty much what we were doing yesterday and early this morning. And first, well, let me say, that is the interpretation that I used to follow, years ago when I was much more reliant on the Visuddhimagga. But when you actually look at the sutta text, it has the expression sabakaya. Sabba means all or entire, and kaya is body. So it's whole body. It's not saying whole body of breath, but it's whole body. And then the second part of that compound, let me share the screen. Yeah, the word that's translated here, experiencing. Okay. Okay, the second part is patisangvedi, which is what we translate as experiencing. That indicates something, I would say, much more, let's say, physically experiential than knowing. So the Visuddhimagga says that what you do is you notice the entire extent of the breath from the very beginning to the very end, from the end to the beginning, so from the beginning to the end of the out-breath. So it says you're knowing the entire extent of the breath, but patisangvedi is something more visceral, more gutsy than simply knowing. So in my view, if you take the words of the sutta literally, take them as they are, it's actually experiencing at a visceral level the entire body, not just knowing the entire duration of the breath, which I think, it's good and necessary, but it seems to me that is pretty much what's covered in the earlier stages.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, but if one is practicing within the tradition that explains according to the Visuddhimagga, and you feel that that kind of explanation is beneficial, then I don't want to say reject that way of practicing.
No,
You
no.
just do whatever you find to be helpful and beneficial. But I think if we go to the original intent of the words of the sutta, I think it does mean experiencing sort of at a visceral, physical level, the whole physical body.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next we have, is it Zaidi or Zaidi? You unmute?
Yes, it's Zadie. Thank you, Dante. I had a question. I find that as I've been following the directions, I do get my day-to-day thoughts to quiet. I can feel the breathing in my nostrils and in the body, but these visual images come into my practice. Are those thoughts or
visual images come? Is that what you
yes,
said?
like, and they repeat in my practice. It's always one of these same three images, and they're generally out in nature. Like I almost feel like I am out in nature in a boat in a forest. Is that a thought that I need to let go of?
Yeah. Some people have a lot of conceptual thoughts. For other people, these sort of distractions might appear as kind of visual images. Whatever it is, whether conceptual thoughts, visual images, you just let them go their own way. And again, you bring the mind back to the object, whether it's the breath or now going through the sensations of the body.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, Samantha. And then you unmute. You have to unmute. Are you still muted? Okay, we'll come back to Samantha. You tried to unmute, but we'll just pass on now to Susie B. You were unmuted, now you muted yourself again. Okay, now
No,
you're...
I did not mute myself. Your assistant accidentally remuted me, and I think that's what's happening. We unmute
Okay.
and then something gets muted again. It's happened a few times, but I thank you so much for, oh gosh, I am so grateful because I broke my leg, I broke an ankle, I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I lost my sitting. I couldn't sit because it was too much, and this already, what you have offered has been so much. So I want to share that I took you very seriously when you said touch, but what I did was, and then took my hand away so that all I was feeling was not my fingers touching my face, which was easily distractible, but that I like created a little bit of a hot spot, top of my head and stuff. And I can't do that when I'm in a group setting, but I went that far because I'm alone here in this space, and it was incredibly valuable. And I just share that for anyone else who is struggling with some of the stuff. But what is coming up for me in this experiencing the whole body, which I know we're working on, I went to the phrase of setting my mindfulness up in front of me, which Bhante G taught on a retreat meant in temporal time, like present moment awareness, mindfulness.
Wait, we're getting the... Go again.
Is that echo me? Let me put a headset on.
Oh, I see. He's presenting the question, your voice through the loudspeaker.
I see. Does this help at all? Is there still an echo? I put a headset on.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, this idea of we sit down, we find our position, we straighten our spine, and we place mindfulness to the front. And on a retreat at Bhavana, Bhanteji said that's intemporal, in time. The mindfulness is in the front of my mind. And then this sense of experiencing the body that as I get to that place where now I'm letting it go up and down, the scan, the inhale is up, 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 up. It ends. The exhale is down, 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 experiencing the body. Is that the use of the breath to bring me back to the present moment seems to me to be reinforced in that this is me experiencing the body inhaling. This is me experiencing the whole body exhaling. Is that, am I steering myself away, or is that a technique that you see may have value in what am I trying to say? I'm trying to stay present with in the midst of this journey on my own of temporal awareness in time, present moment, being here, experiencing this body with the instruction by you of going inhale, going up through the body.
Yeah.
That's done. Exhale, going down.
Let me ask, what is the question? Because
I guess I was asking, is there value in that? Am I going astray? Am I doing something too creative? Am I using what you are saying in a manner that seems to support me, but if you as a monastic with more experience were to say, that sounds like you're moving in this or that a direction, which I guess,
it sounds like
you know what? The question is confusing to me new. I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe put the
question,
any question aside, and we'll just continue into the next section.
Okay, I think I was asking for reinforcement, sir, that I perhaps was on a path of skill. Thank you.
I think my
Bhante?
instructions are pretty simple and clear, so just follow them. Okay.
Bhante?
Okay, I see Samantha is now unmuted, so you can ask your question.
Thank you, Bhante. Sorry about that earlier, and I had problems unmuting my device. Just two questions. One was just following on from what Geeta was saying. I thought I knew what she was talking about because I've heard that before as well. Maybe is it because, like, if you're focusing on the breath and you go to a certain stage where you've left your body and the attention is just purely on the breath, and you go through, maybe it's just the anapana, the steps where Priti Sukha, and you don't feel anything, and you lose your senses eventually. I wonder whether she was talking about whether that was the reason where you can't feel your body, whether she's gone a step ahead.
That, of course, she would have to answer, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said two questions, but I thought of some possible solution to Geeta's problem. But first, let's take your second question.
Yeah, that was just a thought. But this the sensations. When we were going from head to toe, all the sensations. I thought that was Vedana, the second stage of the Satipatthana. I got a bit confused.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting question. And this is a matter of sort of categorization, classification, because it seems to me, even though this exercise, I have to put the share of the screen again. Even though the exercise is included, it's part of mindfulness of breathing and it's included in contemplation of the body. So how does the monk abide contemplating the body as a body, or it should be actually the body in regard to the body. But you see the descriptive word here translated as experiencing is pati sangvedi. Pati is a prefix, sang is a prefix, but the base of the word is vedi, which is also the word related to the word meaning feeling, which is Vedana. So what one is doing, because the attention is directed to the body, so it's one is part of contemplation of the body. So it's put in the first foundation of mindfulness, contemplation of the body. But what one is picking up or attending to in relation to the body are the feelings or sensations occurring in the body. So it seems almost as though this part of the practice that was included in contemplation of the body, but it's also picking up feeling, this would be bodily feeling, which we could also call sensation. And in fact, Goenka, who is very popular meditation teacher,
Yes.
he explains his method. His method
Yeah.
also involves sort of scanning the body to pick up the sensations of the body, and he calls that contemplation of feeling. So basically, it's the same thing that I'm doing here,
Yeah.
part of the practice of contemplation of the body.
Yes, Bhante. I think that's
So
why I
there's
got that,
sort of
because that's
overlap.
what when I did one of the Goenka retreats, that's what we did from the head to the toe, and it was going through the sensation thing. And in fact, when you first put that screen out on as the body, as in the 4 elements, I thought that made more sense to me, as in the air, water elements, and that's what I thought. That's what we, but that's maybe another part of the Kayana Pasana, I suppose.
Yeah, we won't be doing that now. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to take one more question.
Thank you, Bhante.
And that is from Vishaka, because we have to go into the practice. So Vishaka's question, you unmute.
Hi, Bhante. How are
Yeah.
you? With a lot of merits to you. Thank you. I am a long-term practitioner of the Anapanasati Sutra, and I feel some insight into this Sabakaya Patisangvedi when I breathe in and out. Actually, after long time practice, the breath become really short, and then you can feel the whole breath at the one. When you look at it, you feel just a one breath, 1 point right there. And then in and out right there without a long length. You don't feel the length. I don't feel the length of the breath.
Yeah.
That's what I have been seeing, that as the whole breath, it's right there at the focusing point. And then you feel piti, sukha, and everything start to happen. And then like Gita.
I have to ask, what is the question?
Question is like in the Anapanasati Sutra, Buddha said that Sabbakaya is a breath is one kaya out of all the kayas.
Yeah.
You probably translated that, so that's what I think applicable. So my question is, I think the way you did training in the past seemed to be the more correct way of what Buddha intended than what's here, because this is after all breath meditation. And I just have a request that just have the breath meditation for the breath only, because another thing that Buddha had said was like this meditation is not given for people who have Mutta Sati, which is like you cannot really reduce the breath to the shorter level. So it's maybe they don't feel it. They can use a different technique. So so that's just basically my experience is like you can do the breath can be itself right there in and out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, just let me have a suggestion for Gita. It just occurred to me. What you can do, don't follow my instructions now. Don't follow my systematic instructions, but you put your mind on the place where you should feel the buttocks against the cushion, against your seat. And then you could start off there and then pick up whatever sensations you can. And then you can move the attention upwards from the buttocks through the abdomen or the back, or downwards from the buttocks down the legs, and see if you could pick up sensations in that way. It's just one suggestion. Okay, we're going to move into the practice. Anybody else had a question? They could save those questions for the evening. Maybe the questions will answer themselves. And before we go into the practice, we could do a few minutes of bending and stretching so that we can sort of loosen up a bit before we start the sitting. Okay, everybody should be back in their seats. Okay, we could start off with just a couple of rounds of mindful in and out breathing, just to settle the mind. And now you become mindful of the entire body in the sitting position. Okay, now we're going to work through the body with the gradual scan, this slow scan. And the scan is not an end in itself, it's just a way to make the felt experience of the body, the sensations of the body, to make them more evident, easier to discern. Okay, and so we start off with the top of the head. Okay, then we move to the forehead. Again, whatever sensations become manifest, that is enough. But simply pay attention to the whole region and let the sensations reveal themselves, disclose themselves. And we move to the face. Generally, I find that the cheeks are the easiest to begin with in the face. The lips, the jaw, the chin, then the neck, and include the throat, which you can feel as you swallow. And go to the shoulders. You could take each one in turn. But with experience, you can pick up both virtually at the same time. Then we move down to the arms. Start with the upper arms. If you have trouble getting sensation there, you can flex the muscle. Then the lower arms from the elbow to the wrist. Then the hands, including the fingers. If you have trouble getting sensation, you could start with the contact of one hand against the other, and then let the awareness of sensation spread through the entire hands. Including the fingers. Okay, then we come back up to the neck. And then we move to the chest. Again, not just the expansion and contraction of the chest, but the sensations that you experience within the muscular tissue of the chest. Okay, then you come down to the abdomen, the upper part of the abdomen. You could start by noticing the rising and falling movement of the abdomen. But don't stop with that, but go into the actual sensations of the muscles of the abdomen. And you take the hips, then the lower abdomen, extending down to the pubic region. Okay, then you come back up to the top of the head. And then you go back to the back of the head. And the back of the neck. Then the upper back. Lower back. Then you go to the buttocks. You could start with the pressure of the buttocks against the cushion, but then move inward into the tissue, the sensations coming from the tissue. Then to the thighs. The knees. The lower legs. And then the feet together with the toes. And if you want to intensify the sensation in the feet, you could sort of cramp the feet or wiggle the toes. Okay, now we come back up to the whole body in the sitting position. And just take in the whole body with a kind of global awareness of the body. Observing whatever sensations become manifest. And then we do a few sweeps with the out-breath from the top of the head, sweeping the mindfulness down through the body to the feet. And then with the in-breath, you can sweep upwards from the feet to the top of the head. Do it repeatedly over and over. Picking up whatever becomes manifest. Doesn't matter if it's vague and obscure, as long as you're paying close attention to the sensations that appear in the body. Yeah, when you're doing the sweep, you let the mindfulness cut straight through the whole body. You don't differentiate front and back, but you just move right through the whole body. Okay, now you come back to the full body awareness. But now, as you breathe in, you simply experience the sensations through the whole body. And as you breathe out, you experience the sensations through the whole body, not sweeping, but simultaneously. You try to develop that global awareness while breathing in and breathing out, experiencing the whole body. Whatever sensations become evident, become manifest, you keep on trying to expand and extend the range of the awareness so that you're taking in the entire body. Okay, we'll be right back. So as you breathe in, you're experiencing the whole body by way of the sensations in the body. And as you breathe out, you're experiencing the whole body by way of the sensations in the body. And always trying to make the mind more and more subtle, more and more sensitive, more and more mindful of the sensations in the body. And you can look for differences in the qualities of the sensations with the in-breath and with the out-breath. And you pay close attention, you could see that you experience the body in a different way on the in-breath and on the out-breath. Okay, you can relax now. And I don't want us to completely lose the momentum of this practice. So what I would say is that we do just about 15 minutes of the walking meditation. And you could do it at a moderate pace. You don't have to do it very slowly. And then roughly at, say, 3:30, we'll be back in our seats, and then we'll continue with this experiencing the whole body practice. Okay, so you can get up and you can do your walking meditation. Okay, you can return to your seats now. Okay, so now I think you already know the basic method here. And so this session won't be a guided session. So basically, what you can do is you can begin with the slow or gradual scan at your own pace, searching for the sensations in the different parts of the body. And then after you go through the scan, then you do a few up and down sweeps, and then you come to the full body awareness, trying to experience the entire body through the sensations while breathing in and breathing out, and attending to any subtle differences in the sensations as you're breathing in and breathing out, and attempting to make the mind softer and softer, gentler and gentler, and more receptive to what's going on in the body. After you're doing this full body awareness for some time, if you find that the sensations are tending to become duller rather than clearer, then you don't have to go back to the scan, but you could do some sweeps, up and down sweeps a few times to sort of heighten the sense of the sensations and to heighten the sensations in the body, then go back to the simple full body awareness, observing or experiencing the whole body while breathing in and breathing out. Okay, so let us, everybody, continue now on their own. This will be a 40-minute session. Okay, you can relax now. And we'll take a break until, I'll extend it for 5 minutes. So we'll come back at 5:35. Of course, I find it takes a little more time to prepare the tea and to finish drinking it. Okay, so 4:35 we'll come back for the Dhamma talk. Okay. Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'll begin with the salutation to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so I want to base this talk on a saying or a statement that occurs in a book that was authored by my own teacher in Sri Lanka, the German monk named Venerable Nyanaponika Mahathera. And the title of the book is The Heart of Buddhist Meditation. And first, there's a little interesting background to my connection with this book and with the author. Back in 1967, when I was a graduate student and first becoming interested in Buddhism, I was in New York City browsing around in a bookshop, and I was looking for books on Buddhism, and there were very few books available at that time. It's not like the situation today where there is a deluge of books on Buddhism. And so browsing in the shelves, I came across this book called The Heart of Buddhist Meditation. And of course, my main interest in Buddhism at that time was in meditation. And so I bought that book. It was published in England by a publisher called Ryder, which had a line of books connected with the wisdom of the East. I think that there was an editor with not wisdom publications, with Ryder publishers who had an interest in Asian spirituality, and he was collecting a lot of material on that line, and publishing it. And so one of those books was called The Heart of Buddhist Meditation. And unlike most books, this book did not give any information about the author. It just was written by the author, but gave the author's name as Nyanaponika Thera. And it had, the preface said, Forest Hermitage, Kandy, Ceylon. At that time, the country that we now call Sri Lanka was known as Ceylon, the old British name. And so I read that book, and I was very impressed by it. In fact, that was a book that made a strong impression on many people from my generation who became involved with Buddhism. I know Joseph Goldstein was strongly influenced by that book. The British mindfulness insight teacher, Christopher Titmuss, was influenced by that book, probably Jack Cornfield, Sharon Salzberg, and other present-day meditation teachers. And so I knew nothing about the author, just from that statement at the bottom of the preface, Forest Hermitage, Kandy, Ceylon. I knew that he was living in Ceylon, and I assumed that he was a Sri Lankan, or we would say at that time, a Ceylonese Buddhist monk, though his style of English was very good. And it had the kind of elevated quality that we would identify with a European writer on a topic, rather than a typical American writer. And so several years later, I learned that the author of that book, Nyanaponika Thera, was in fact not Ceylonese. Though he was living in Sri Lanka, I learned that he was a German monk, and that he was himself a disciple of another German monk from an earlier generation, whose name was Nyanaponika Mahathera. Nyanaponika had come to Sri Lanka, or actually at that time Ceylon, I think in the year 1903. Nyanatiloka actually, in quest of, of Buddhism, first went to India thinking India was a Buddhist country. And so when he wound up in Bombay, presently called Mumbai, he was inquiring, where are all of the Buddhist monasteries? And they told him, there ain't no Buddhism here. If you want Buddhism, go south, young man, to Sri Lanka, to Ceylon. And so he went to Ceylon, and when he got to Ceylon, he learned that there was a Scottish Buddhist monk living in Burma. And so he wound up going to Burma. I think he was ordained in Burma. And eventually he wound up coming back to Ceylon. And in 1911, he established a monastery for Western Buddhist monks, primarily German monks, in the west, the southwest of the country. The place that he established was called Island Hermitage, and it attracted, in the early years of the 20th century, a fair number of German, maybe some other Europeans, but mainly German men who became ordained as monks. I think none of them lasted as monks. And then in the 1930s, a young man from Germany named Sigmund Finnegar came to Sri Lanka, or Ceylon, because he had heard about Nyanatiloka Thera and about this monastery for Western monks. And he came and became a pupil of Nyanatiloka Thera. And Nyanatiloka gave him the name Nyanaponika. So of that particular lineage used the first part of the name Jnana, meaning superior knowledge. So Nyanaponika became a monk under Nyanatiloka, and later in the 1950s, they wound up moving from the Island Hermitage in the south of Sri Lanka, where the climate was very hot and humid, to Kandy, where the climate was quite pleasant, temperate, even a little bit cool during the winter season. And so Nyanaponika wound up staying at the Forest Hermitage after the death of Nyanatiloka. And he wrote this book and published a book called The Heart of Buddhist Meditation, based first on his own study of the Satipatthana Sutta, and then on his own experience years later, meditating in Burma, or now Myanmar, under the famous meditation master Mahasi Sayadaw. And so I found this book and I used it as my guide for meditation for quite a number of years. And I wound up going to Sri Lanka and becoming a Buddhist monk. And during my first few months as a monk, I made a visit out of curiosity to Island Hermitage, which had the reputation of being a kind of mecca for Western monks. And by chance, when I came to the Island Hermitage, I saw sitting on the bench in the dining hall, there was an elderly European monk, a white monk, and I came to inquire, to get introduced, and I was introduced to him as Nyanaponika Thera, because he had come down, this was after the rainy season, he had come down from Kandy, from the Forest Hermitage, to his own ordination place, his original ordination place, the Island Hermitage, as just part of the tradition of visiting one's home monastery after the rainy season. And so I met Nyanaponika Thera there, and then several years later, actually it was the year later, he would go every year, he would go to Europe for a couple of months to visit his old friends in Europe. And he asked me, this was 1973, or it could have been 1974, to look after the Island Hermitage, to the Forest Hermitage during his absence. And when I would arrive and after he would return from Europe, we would spend time together, and that way we became friendly. And then I wound up eventually living at the Forest Hermitage with Nyanaponika Thera during the last 10.5 years of his life, attending upon him right up to the time of his death in 1994. And so this was a kind of very strange and interesting sort of what's the expression that I want? It looks like, on the outside, it looks like a coincidence, but it's a kind of confluence of conditions, probably rooted deeply in the past. And also, like myself, Nyanaponika Thera was originally of Jewish heritage. And one of the reasons why he left Germany in the 1930s to go to Sri Lanka was because the Nazis under Hitler had started its policy of persecuting Jewish people. In 1936, when he left Germany to come to Sri Lanka, the persecution of the Jews had not yet reached the degree of violence and viciousness that it reached in later years, but it had already started. And so he brought his own mother, his father had died earlier, he brought his mother from Germany to Austria, thinking that she would be safe in Austria. But then in 1938, the Nazis invaded Austria and annexed Austria. So Nyanaponika Thera arranged to bring his mother and some other relatives from Austria to Ceylon, to Sri Lanka. And the other relatives went on to Australia, but his mother wound up living in Sri Lanka for the rest of her life. And she became, under his influence, a Buddhist as well. Okay, so that's sort of the background. And the statement in the book goes something like this. I didn't have the book with me, but I know the idea pretty clearly, if not the exact words, that the practice of the Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness, is of benefit or helpful in enabling one to know the mind, to transform the mind, and to liberate the mind. So 3 benefits, 3 ways in which the practice of Satipatthana is helpful, beneficial, in knowing the mind, in changing or transforming the mind, and in liberating the mind. So let's sort of explore each of these aspects. So first, the practice of Satipatthana, of mindfulness meditation of any form, is helpful in knowing the mind. And it seems so strange to say that we need a particular method, a particular technique to know our own mind, to know ourselves. And yet that is the sort of ideal that has been set up by some of the greatest philosophers and thinkers of humanity. I think it was Socrates who said that our task in life is to know thyself. And in Shakespeare's Hamlet, the wise elderly man, I don't remember his name, Polonius, I think it was, advises, is it Hamlet or somebody else? He says, to thine own self be true. And so to be true to yourself, you have to know yourself, to know your mind. And yet our mind, this is the interesting part, the mind is so close, it's the most intimate thing that we're related to, even more intimate, even more related, even more intimately to our own mind than to any other person, to our beloved husband or wife, to our own children, even to our own body. You know, the body can have, we'd have almost no way of accessing what's going on with the heart, with the liver, with the kidneys, with the spleen. Unless we feel ill, then we could detect the functioning of those organs. Those organs are functioning all the time, but we don't have direct access to them. We only get access by undergoing a medical test, undergoing some tests at the hospital, or having somebody who can read our pulses, even pulses connected to other organs. But in our day-to-day life, we really have no knowledge of what's going on with the heart, the literal heart organ, the liver, kidneys, and so forth. And yet our own mind should always be accessible to us, because all we have to do is look inside ourselves and we could see our thoughts, our purposes, our aims, our motivations, our emotions. And yet we spend so little time, almost no time, looking in at the contents of the mind. And yet the mind is really the source of all of our true suffering and true happiness. Of course, when the body gets ill, that can cause a lot of physical suffering, but the deeper kind of suffering originates from the mind. When the body is healthy, that gives a sense of well-being and pleasure. But if the mind is upset or disturbed, even when the body is in maximal health, the mind will still be in a state of distress. And so the most important task, we could say, in our life is to know our own mind. And yet the mind has ways of playing tricks on us. It sort of sets up a smokescreen so that we have very little knowledge of what's going on in our mind. And because of that, we get knocked around, sometimes by thoughts, by stray thoughts, irrational thoughts, wild and restless thoughts, strange desires, volatile desires, by volatile emotions, destructive emotions. So most people without any access to a method of mental training really get pulled down in there. We don't have to talk about future lives or other realms of existence, but in this life, they get pulled down into states of intense, unbearable misery just because of the functioning of their own minds. Sometimes those destructive states come maybe from deep karmic formations that have been inherited over the course of lifetimes. But in other cases, probably in most cases, they come from just the lack of any method of mental training, so that we get driven by our desires, by our cravings, by our explosive emotions. And then those explosive emotions bring us into conflict and friction with others. And then when we get negative feedback from others, that causes us to become miserable within ourselves. And so we could say that we have a primary task, if we're really to become truly happy and autonomous people in control of themselves, having mastery over themselves, we have to know our minds. And there's an interesting sutta that occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Tens. It's sutta number 51. Yeah, I just had brought it up just a few minutes ago. Let me just look at it. So the Buddha opens by saying, a monk who is not skilled in knowing the minds of others should train thus: I will be skilled in knowing the ways of my own mind. So here the Buddha is referring to, it seems that there would have been like one of the supernormal powers that can be achieved through this practice of deep meditation, deep samadhi, is the ability to know the minds of others, to be able to read the minds of others. This is called parachita. I don't remember the Pali expression. So it's the ability to know the minds of others. And probably there were many monks in the Buddha's time who wanted to acquire that supernormal power, thinking that they could work wonders by being able to tell their own monks, their fellow monks, this is what you were thinking, that's what you were feeling. And then to impress their lay supporters, I know what you were thinking last night. I see what you are thinking now. And so the Buddha here he's saying that, okay, if you develop that ability and you use it wisely, that might be good, but that's not of primary importance. What's of primary importance is to be skilled in knowing the ways of your own mind, being able to read your own mind, not to read the minds of others. Okay, so how does one read one's own mind? How does one get to know one's own mind? Of course, it's possible just in the course of our day-to-day life by reflecting inwardly to get to observe oneself, to observe one's thoughts, feelings, aims, motivations, and so on. But that method is not, or that's not a systematic method, and so it's not entirely reliable. And one can be easily deceived about one's motivations, one's purposes, one's own inner qualities, one's strengths and one's defects. One might become blind to one's defects and might elevate and exaggerate one's strong points. And so just random self-reflection is not entirely reliable. And so the method of methodical meditation practice through the application of mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati and sampajanya, are the tools that enable us to know the workings of our own mind. And we can see this already at the very basic level when we direct ourselves to the task of following our breath, simply doing mindfulness of breathing, trying to be attentive to the in-breath and the out-breath. So I always give the instruction at the beginning of the session. I say, okay, when you're sitting there, then you set up your mindfulness at the post of observation, and then you follow the entire in-breath from its beginning through its duration to its end. You follow the entire out-breath from its beginning through its duration to its end. And what happens when you're trying to follow the entire in-breath and out-breath? Do you completely succeed in following it without interruption? I mean, of course, if you're a very skilled meditator, you can, but for almost all of us, what happens is that before you know it, thoughts are popping into the mind. And sometimes the thoughts become so strong that you could be sitting there for a couple of minutes, letting one thought lead to another thought, to another thought, and then suddenly you realize, hey, didn't he say that I should be following my entire in-breath and entire out-breath? And now I'm not even following a single breath. I've been on that trip to Europe, that trip to California, I've been getting my passport stamped and meeting my friends in Germany or in California, and now they're putting me up in a hotel, and what am I going to be eating for breakfast and for lunch? And so you've completely lost the track of the meditation object. Okay, this is a trivial example, but as you pay attention and you start designating the nature of the thoughts, then you start to see how your mind is working. And the Buddha in the sutta, he gives examples of the kinds of mental states in terms of which you should evaluate yourself. What you should be looking for when you're investigating the mind. So you should ask yourself, he says, am I often given to craving, or am I without craving, given to greed or without greed? Am I often thinking about how I can acquire more wealth, more property, or indulge in more sense pleasures? Or am I relatively detached from the claims of worldly pleasures? Am I often given to ill will, to resentment, to hatred, or without ill will? So those are actually the two strongest unwholesome forces usually working in the mind: greed, craving, and ill will and resentment. Then come the lesser ones. Am I often overcome by dullness and drowsiness, or free from dullness and drowsiness? Am I often restless and agitated and excited, or am I calm and self-contained, self-collected? Am I often plagued by doubt or free from doubt? Am I often angry or without anger, lazy or energetic, concentrated or unconcentrated, and so on? So this mentions 10 states. So in this provides a particular template through which we could come to understand our own mind. And so when we practice mindfulness, even if it's a simple method like mindfulness of breathing, when we become aware of our thoughts, and then apart from the thoughts, become aware of our emotions, we become aware of our motivations, then we are obtaining clearer and fuller knowledge of ourselves, clearer understanding of ourselves. That is an essential step in the process in cultivating the Buddha's path to liberation, because in order to gain the final goal, we have to understand what our impediments are, what are the obstacles that we're facing. And each of us, we have a very different constellation of mental factors that serve as obstructions. So even these words used in the suttas, we could say are just broad rubrics, broad categories under which there are many different shades of emotions, motivations, mental states. And so as we observe our own mind, we become more finely attuned to the workings of our mind. But we have to also have the determination to be honest with ourselves, to face our weaknesses, our defects, our shortcomings with courage, with determination, and with patience. And when I say with patience, this means that we don't condemn ourselves and dismiss ourselves because we have these unwholesome dispositions of the mind. The unwholesome dispositions of the mind are so often, usually they're deeply rooted. They're the products of we would say, of a whole lifetime of habitual ways of thinking. And from the Buddhist perspective, we would say of many lifetimes of indulging in particular thoughts and emotions. So we could say that the mind, I sometimes compare it to a piece of fabric, which is made up of many different threads, or a sweater made up of many different strands of wool. And so the sweater will have a particular pattern, and that pattern seems to be something sort of autonomous, self-sufficient, sort of substantially existent in its own right. But if we look carefully at the sweater, we could see that the sweater is made up, that pattern of the sweater is made up of different strands of wool that have been woven together to create that pattern. And so our own characters, our own personalities are made up of the different strands of thoughts or thought formations, habitual formations, habits of thinking, habits of emotions, which we've indulged in through a full lifetime and probably many lifetimes. And they've been woven together and make up the pattern of our character. And so we have to patiently look at these strands of our character to find out what the weak spots are and what the strengths are, the wholesome potentials, the wholesome qualities that we have. And what we have to do is to work to overcome, to transform, and remove the unwholesome qualities, and to strengthen and complete the wholesome qualities. And that brings us to the second task of right mindfulness. So the first task is to know the mind, to understand the mind. The second task is to transform the mind. And so we transform the mind, which means to debilitate, to weaken, and eventually overcome the unwholesome qualities, the destructive emotions, the unwholesome thought formations, and then to arouse those wholesome qualities that have not yet arisen, and to strengthen the wholesome qualities that are already present. And so sometimes we find that even without using more specific techniques, simply being mindful of the unwholesome qualities of mind brings a certain inner resistance to them. And that inner resistance gains momentum the more we practice and the more we practice diligently, so that the unwholesome qualities tend gradually over time to become weaker. And when we're observing them with mindfulness, then they can't do their damage. At least as long as we're being attentive to them, they can't do their damage. I illustrate this, I have a little simile to illustrate this. It's like we have a shop, and there are various items in the store, and then we have a person who's kind of shoplifter comes into the shop. And the shoplifter, it's a kind of, the shop has a somewhat complicated structure, different rows, like in a supermarket. And so the shoplifter looks around. He sees that there are no observation mirrors, no cameras in the shop. And so he realizes he's free to take the things that he wants. So he has an overcoat, he sees some nice, maybe you'll say it's a drugstore, he sees some vitamins he wants, takes them, puts them into the inner pocket of his overcoat. So he needs some toothpaste, a little toothpaste there, nice fragrant soap goes into the other pocket. and the clerk is up at the cash register checking out some other customers, no cameras, no observation mirrors. And so then the thief walks out with his overcoat is now filled, the inner pockets filled with items from the pharmacy, and he gets away with it. So that's the way the mind works when it's not put under observation. But if the shoplifter now comes into the pharmacy, he looks around, he sees closed circuit camera over there, closed circuit camera over there. Nice perfume to give to his girlfriend, a nice cologne he would like for himself. He needs some toothpaste, but no way to steal it from the shop. And then he walks out with empty pockets in his overcoat. So this is like putting the mind under observation. It creates that inner resistance to the workings of the defilements. But once we see what are the defilements that are particularly persistent in our character through this self-observation, then we come to know, to understand what are the practices that we need to weaken and overcome those defilements. And so say if we're putting ourselves under observation, we might think we have a very gentle, loving character, that we're friendly to everybody, but we start doing mindful observation of the mind, and we see subtle thoughts of resentment, of envy, of dislike, even little exploding thoughts of anger towards many people. And so we come to realize that tendency to ill will that we were deceiving ourselves about, thinking we're so gentle and kind, but now that tendency to ill will is really standing out starkly, clearly in technicolor. And so we realize that we have to train the mind to overcome ill will. And so the antidote to ill will, to hatred, to anger, recommended in the sutras is metta bhavana, the development of loving kindness. So as we do this, we sort of supplement our practice of simple mindfulness with the meditation of loving kindness. If we see maybe we have a tendency to be cruel and harsh towards others, to hurt the feelings of others, then we see that we need to cultivate compassion. If we see that we tend to become envious of others, to resent the good qualities and success of others, then we could put in periods of mudita, developing the meditation of altruistic joy, sympathetic joy. So we could see that we could balance our different practices to help us to overcome these weaknesses. And in the monastic life, like one of the sort of big obstacles for monastics, and particularly maybe more for monks than for nuns, I would say, is sensual desire, particularly in the form of sexual desire. And so if those thoughts and emotions start bubbling into the mind, the direct antidote for that is the meditation on the parts of the body, what's called the asubha meditation, the meditation on the unattractive nature of the body. And so sometimes just the bare practice of mindfulness can help to weaken the defilements, but sometimes we have to use the direct antidote towards those defilements. So in this way, the practice of mindfulness helps us to transform the mind. And then the third benefit of the systematic practice of mindfulness that my teacher, Venerable Nyanaponika, pointed out is to liberate the mind. And to liberate the mind means to free the mind totally and permanently from all of the defilements which are ultimately rooted in the three basic roots of greed, aversion, and delusion. And of those three roots, the most basic is delusion or ignorance. And so to overcome all defilements, what has to be done is to uproot, to remove, to extricate that fundamental root, ignorance or delusion. And that comes about by applying the practice of mindfulness once one gains sufficient power of mindfulness and power of samadhi to the cultivation of panya or wisdom, the wisdom that sees into the three, what's called the three characteristics. Through mindfully attending to the process of experience, one starts to see all of the factors of body and mind arising and passing away. So that brings the insight into impermanence. And we see this in the Satipatthana Sutta, where under each major section it says, one dwells contemplating such and such, the body's nature of arising. One dwells contemplating the body's nature of vanishing. One dwells contemplating the body's nature of arising and vanishing. So when Sats begins with the insight into impermanence, arising and passing away, then through that insight into impermanence, we see that whatever is impermanent is unsatisfactory, not capable of providing full satisfaction. In other words, it's dukkha as being defective, flawed, inadequate, and then whatever is impermanent and unsatisfactory cannot be identified as a true, lasting, substantial self. In other words, it's anatta, not myself. And through, in the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the contemplation of Dhammas, one applies this understanding to the five aggregates, that one sees the form aggregate arising and vanishing, the feeling aggregate arising and vanishing, the perception aggregate, the volitional activities, the consciousness aggregate arising and vanishing. And as that insight into arising and vanishing develops to deeper and deeper levels, it helps to abolish that underlying root of ignorance. And when ignorance is uprooted, then all the defilements vanish together with ignorance. And so in this way, the methodical practice of Satipatthana brings the liberation of the mind. And so at the end of the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says that one who dwells thus, practicing the four foundations of mindfulness, as he's explained in the sutta, for 7 years, then down to 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, then down to 7 months, 6 months, 5 months, then to to 2 weeks, to half a month, and then he stops at 7 days. One who practices the four foundations of mindfulness continuously for 7 days, he says one of two results is guaranteed, or is to be expected, not guaranteed. Either full liberation here and now, that is the attainment of arhatship, or if there is some residue of the defilements remaining, the stage of non-returning, that is the third of the four stages of realization. Okay, we don't have 7 days here, we have 4 days, but let's see if we can do it. So the Buddha will have to revise the sutta and say, not 7 days, but one who practices even 6 days, 5 days, 4 days. One of two results can be expected, either full liberation here and now, or if there's a residue of the defilements, the stage of non-return. Okay, so that will do with our sutta, with our Dhamma discourse. And we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll do the chanting. So you could get up and do a little bending and stretching. Or if you have to use the restroom, you could use the restroom. And then be back at 5, we'll give it 7 minutes. 5:27, we'll do the chanting. Okay, so everybody should be back in their seats. And we need the co-host to put up the text. Listen, you could increase the size a bit. Okay, that's good. And so we do 3 bows, sort of half bows. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadhamma sarati satta deva manusanang buddho bhagavati namo tassa samma sambuddhassa ye cha buddha atita cha ye cha buddha anagata Pajupanna chaye Buddha ahang vandami sabada nati me saranam manyang buddho me saranang varang etena satchavajena hotu me jayamangalang uttamangena vandehang Padapangsu varuttamang Buddhayo kalito doso Buddho kamatu tang mamang Buddhang yavani panapariyantang Saranam gacchami. And then we do half bow to the Buddha. Then to the Dhamma. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayako Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Namo Tassa Niyanika sadamasa ye cha dhamma atita cha ye cha dhamma anagata pachupanna cha ye dhamma aham vandami sabada nati me saranam manyang Dhammo me saranang varang etena satchavajena hotu me jayamangalang uttamangena vandehang dhamman chatividang varang dhammeyo kalito doso Dhammo kamatu dhammamang dhammang yavani panapariyantang saranam gacchami. And then they bow to the Dhamma. And homage to the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Samichipatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Yadidang chatari purisa yugani atta purisa pugala esa bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttaram punyaketam lokasati. Namo tassa atta ariya pugala mahasangasa ye cha sangha atita cha ye cha sangha anagata pajupanna cha ye sangha ahang vandami sabada nati me saranam manyang sango me saranam varang etena sachavajena hotu me jaya mangalang uttamangena vandehang sangan chatuviduttamang Sangeyo kalito doso, Sango kamatu tang mamang, Sangang yavaniba napariyantang saranam gacchami. And then they bow to the Sangha. Homage to the three symbols. Vandami chetiyang sabang sabatane supatiti tang saririkadatu mahabodhing buddharupang sakalang sada imaya dhammanu dhammapatipatiya buddhang pujemi Imaya dhammanu dhammapatipatiya dhammang pujemi. Imaya dhammanu dhammapatipatiya sanghang pujemi. Okay, that's it. Now we go to down to the Metta Sutta, the discourse of loving kindness. This is a bit difficult to follow because the meter is not the regular meter. Karaniyamata kusalena yang tang santang padang abhisamecha sako ujucha sujucha suvachocha samuduanatimani santu sakocha subarocha apakichocha salahukavuti santindriyocha nipakocha apagabbo kulesu anugito nacha kudang samachare kinchi yena vinyupare upavadeyung sukino va kemino hantu sabbe sata bhavantu sukhitata ye ke chipana bhutati tasava tavarava anavasesa digava ye mahantava majima rasakanukatula dita va yeva adita ye chadure vasanti avidure bhuta va sambhavesi va sabbe sata bhavantu sakitata naparo parang niko beta nati manyeta gatachinang kanchi Pyaro sana patiga sanya nanya manya sadukamicheya mataya taneyam putang ayusa ekaputang anurake evam pisabhabutesu manasang bhavaye aparimanang Metantra sabalokasmin manasang bhavaye aparimanang udang adochatiryancha asambadang averang asapatang titang charang nisinova sayanu vayavatasavigatamitto Etang sating aditeya brahmametang viharamidamahu diting cha anupagamma silava dasanena sampanno kamesu vinayagedang nahi jatu gabaseyang punareti. Etena sachavajena sotite hotu sabada. Etena sachavajena sabarogo vinasatu. Etena sachavajena hotu te jayamangalam. Sabityo vivajantu, sabarogo vinasatu, mate bhavatu antarayo, sukhi digayuko bhava, bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabba devata, sabba buddhanubhavena, Sada soti bhavantu te, bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabba devata, sabba dhammanubhavena, sada soti bhavantu te, bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabba devata, sabba sanganubhavena. Sadasoti bhavantu te. Now the sharing of the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva Chirang rakantu mang parang. Emina punyakamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana patiya idang me punya kamang asavakaya vahang hotu sabaduka pamuchatu te. And then we go sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And then we could do we could stand and do 3 half bows to end the afternoon session.
Bhaktu Bante.
Okay, so we have a break now until 7 p.m. And during the break, again, try to maintain hopefully you could observe noble silence during the break, or if you have to converse with family members, try to keep it fairly minimal and restricted to routine matters. And in all the activities, again, you can take a walk if you like, doing so with mindfulness, or take a bath or shower if you want, again, doing it with mindfulness. And we come back at 7 p.m. We'll take a short question period then, and then we'll continue with our practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bante. At 7 p.m. Bante.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Om Stuti.
Sonali Munasinghe
Om
කෙනෙක්.
Stuti.
Om Stuti කිව්වා. Sonali Munasinghe කෙනෙක් left.
Thank you, Bande.